Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. Today I am making a red hood helmet. Finally answering some people's prayers who have been begging me to make this thing for a while. There are a lot of iterations out there of this character and the helmet is no exception. A while back I made the half mask, which is like the outlaw version. I'm gonna kind of do something similar as far as how I did this one, which was to pick and choose different iterations that I liked and add or take away from, maybe mix and match where I can. So I am focusing on kind of the more modern Red Hood helmet takes, going with like the Ronin style, or there's tons of them out there. Just Google Red Hood helmet and you'll see there's like a bazillion different takes on it. I'm going to make my own version of it, which will be an amalgamation of a bunch of different types. So without further ado, let's make a Red Hood helmet out of some EVA foam. Let's get to building. So let's start this build off with a few disclaimers. One, the template somehow ended up a little bit smaller than it was supposed to. It fit my wife's head perfectly, which is almost 22 inches around at the forehead. My head is about 24 inches around at the forehead, so in order for it to fit, I had to scale my pattern up to 112%. I have a video on how to figure out the scaling, and I'll leave it in the description below for you. Everything you see up to the paint job is the smaller sized helmet. I traced the material onto some 6mm EVA foam with a paint pen so that I can see my marks on the black foam. After making the build 3 times, I have made some modifications to it so that you won't have to worry about that on your build. Next step is to cut out the pattern. I like to first cut out my foam into smaller, more manageable chunks so that I can maneuver around freely with my blade. I also like to keep my template cutouts close by so that I can use them as a reference for angles or special cuts that I need to make. This helmet had quite a bit. When you're cutting the foam, remember that you're cutting the inside of the lines. Also refer to the cover page I put on my templates. It has a lot of extra instructions to help you build this stuff on your own. You may wonder how to transfer the lines on the inside of the template. You just cut on one side of the line, put it on the part, and then trace it. I tape mine back together when I'm finished because this is the pattern you see on the download. I tape these patterns to an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of paper and then scan them on my printer, then that gets uploaded to whoever wants to use it. It's always free, it's in the description, the last link, and usually uploaded the next day from when the video is released. least. I get a lot of comments about how easy I make this look. The fact is, you're watching an edited video. Most of the time my mistakes are edited out. Here's a clip I thought I would share with you of me messing up. I cut a V-groove into the back of this piece when I should have made a simple straight cut, and then I spent the next 15 minutes or so trying to fix my mistake with super glue. I also accidentally punctured through all the way to the front on my cut. Assembly time. I have contact cemented all the edges, and after a few minutes when it's no longer wet to the touch, they're ready to stick together. I like to assemble my helmets in halves. That way the glue doesn't set up quick on me and I can take my time. Sure, it's a little more back and forth, but it's well worth the extra time taken. All the little U-shaped marks along the edges are registration marks. These lines are there to help you align corresponding pieces together. Notice on my table I have the pattern oriented to the basic position of where they go together. There are several parts that overlay pieces instead of joining on the edges like they typically do on most of my patterns. These are pink highlighted areas. The blue lines are inward 45-degree angle cuts and the green lines are outward 45-degree angle cuts. All these colors, markings, numbers are explained on that cover letter I mentioned earlier. With both halves assembled, I am ready to join them down the middle. Some people like to push the foam onto a flat surface to help keep the parts flush. I prefer to do it by touch with the piece facing me. I have a side of the registration marks this way and I can feel the surface as I go to get it close to flush on the outside. Do whatever's more comfortable to you. Once the halves are joined, I can put on the last piece, which is the chin. Any part that sits proud can be sanded back with a rotary tool later. The ears are pretty simple. The angle cuts on the side pieces will allow it to sit right on the middle part and sit right on the helmet assembly. You may wonder what the weird swiggly line is on the middle part. This is where I started and ended the side piece. It's important to note because my patterns are made by hand. The registration marks along these two rounded parts are not symmetrical, so start with a swiggly line and end with a swiggly line and you should be alright. After they are stuck together, attach them to the desired location on the helmet. I should have punched these holes out beforehand, but since I'm making this pattern up as I go, I need to add them now. I'm using a hole punch tool from Cos Tools to make my cut. As I decide where I want it to go, I mark it on my template so you don't have to do any guesswork. You could easily cut this out with a blade or burrow into it with a rotary tool. Punching it in the way I am just made sense for the current scenario of me not planning ahead. The red lines on this pattern are where I burned in some recessed lines with my wood burner. Make sure to wear a respirator and work in a well-ventilated area while burning foam. You don't want to breathe in the fumes, they are awful. These lines are not 100% necessary, but I think they get the flat surfaces some nice little details to look at. You could also burn them in before the assembly of your parts. On attempts 2 and 3 of making this helmet, that's what I did. The small helmet was kind of unexpected, then I guessed my wife's head size from memory, which was wrong, and led to the oversized second attempt at the build. Then I measured her head to get the exact scale I needed, put an extra 1 or 2% on there, and got the size that actually fits me. Two coats of Plasti-Dip. I sprayed a base layer of red spray paint on the middle of the helmet. Now you can see there are 2 helmets. Technically there's 3, but I didn't paint the oversized one. The red you see here is not the spray paint that I just showed in the previous scene, but acrylic paint I brushed over it. It was super humid outside when I spray painted the helmets, and it left these weird bubbles on the surface. I covered most of it up with about 3 layers of acrylic paint. Now the ears, jaw piece, and bolts on his forehead get a metallic paint. I'm using some Plat-Effects acrylic for this step. It took about 2 coats to get good coverage on all of them. The acrylic paint kind of left my helmet with a matte looking finish. Most of the Red Hood helmets that I based my build off of were all like super glossy, so to keep the flexibility of my paint job and the plasti dip, I am coating it with some watered down Mod Podge. I spread it on with a sponge brush thinking it would eliminate the brush strokes for a smoother finish. It ended up creating lots of bubbles, so eventually I switched over to a brush and applied 4 layers of watered down glue to make a super shiny finish. I bought these lens light kits on Amazon a while back. I've used them in several other builds. They have a flexible vinyl and little white dots painted on one side. As light spreads across the lens, it gives the eye a nice glow that you can see out of, kinda. I believe these are listed as Batman helmet lenses, but I don't think my Red Hood will mind. I'll try and put links to them down in the description. I did put them on the ones that I am gonna wear. I may try and find some smaller ones for the smaller helmet because it took up a lot of space around the nose area with the shrinkage in size. You could use super glue for this, but it kind of hazes over the lens, so I would not recommend it. I used hot glue and just put a little bit of pressure on the inside as the glue cooled down. And we are finished. Here is the end result. I don't know that I'm actually done with this particular build. I made it very clean, which is not typical of a Much Props build, but I really like the way that it looked, and I kind of ran out of time because this was how big it started out as. It could barely fit my wife, so if you want to use the template, you're definitely going to have to resize it to fit. This is at 112% of the template size. Use that for what it's worth. I messed up a lot in this build. This was 125% of the template size, which is way too big. This could literally fit this helmet inside of it. You make mistakes, you learn from it, you hopefully don't waste a bunch of material in the process, but I like the way it turned out. I also haven't figured out how I'm gonna house the battery pack just yet. I'm thinking I may hollow out an ear or something to make it easier to like kind of put in there, but I ran out of time for this week, so it is what it is. With school coming to an end and the final week of school, for me at least, being next week, it was a rush to get this finished last night. So yeah, maybe you'll try and make one of these yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to mash up a bunch of other people's interpretations of the helmet and make something own, unique, kind of cool, and hopefully part of a bigger cosplay that will definitely be being built at some point. Yeah. Maybe you'll get some.
Yay!
And inevitably, they're gonna ask you, how'd you make that? You can give them one of these. Tell them, Much Props. These lights are super bright and definitely a bit menacing. So, just tuck that away for now. Peace out. If you enjoyed this build and would like to see more builds like it, please consider joining these awesome people listed here with me over on my Patreon to build a bigger, better, more creative community together.